Hi there, it's me, Alicia Butler-Pierre, and in this season of the Business Infrastructure Podcast, we are touring 12 different countries to find out specifically what is it like to do business in those countries. And next up on our tour is Bali, Indonesia. But before we get into that, make sure you click that subscribe button first, and don't forget to click that notification bell. Without any further ado, let's figure out, what is it like to do business in Indonesia?
We have another long flight ahead of us as we travel further east from Rotterdam in the Netherlands to Bali, Indonesia. We're looking forward to this. After spending so much time traversing Europe, we can't wait to experience some tropical weather again. I'm Alicia Butler-Pierre, and this is Season 18 of the Business Infrastructure Podcast, the show where we share operational tips, tactics, and tools for curing back-office blues. Although the exhaustion of so much travel in such a short time is starting to wear on us, we can't help planning all the fun things we're going to do in Bali as we sit on Equilibria Airlines. We're at the halfway point of our 12-country tour, and this trip won't be strictly business. We're going to be here an entire week, and we're going to make good use of that time. This episode is underwritten by Equilibria Incorporated, the company behind this podcast, where we design scale-ready business infrastructure for fast-growing small businesses. As we descend into the Denpasar International Airport in Bali, we're immediately struck by the sheer beauty of the landscape. All of the greenery, the crystal blue waters, the vibrant colors of both buildings and people's clothes. No doubt, this is a tropical paradise. I can see why our host, the million-dollar sales guy, Mr. Desmond Dixon, says this is his favorite country. Before exiting the plane, I called Desmond on WhatsApp to let him know we've arrived. He's ready to greet us and take us to a villa for our meeting. We're now outside underneath a canopy, drinking fruit juices, wearing our hats and shades. It's easy to understand how you could get used to living here. But what about working here? This is episode 227, Doing Business in Indonesia with Desmond Dixon.
My name is Desmond Dixon, and I'm originally from Dayton, Ohio, out in the Midwest. And now I am currently in Bali, Indonesia.
I joke with Desmond every time I communicate with him because he literally seems to be in a different country each time. Here's something you need to know. Desmond is also a digital nomad. So far, we've heard from other digital nomads this season, none of whom are American. So let's start there. How did Desmond become an official digital nomad?
Wow, that's a really, really good question. Well, I would have to say when I went to the Ukraine for a business trip to work with a client for a few months, they set me up with different apartments and things while I was there. And I just got a taste of working in a different country. It was just like normal life. And so I got my first taste of remote work.
While working in Ukraine, Desmond still had an apartment back in downtown San Diego, California, an apartment that cost him $5,000 US a month. So when he returned back to the US,
I just had this itch to go back, not specifically to Ukraine, but I just wanted to see more things because I got so used to working overseas. So I essentially did the brave thing. First, I started watching YouTube videos to figure it out and trying to figure out where I want to go, because when you expat or you leave the country, you have the entire world as your oyster, right? Everywhere I was looking was pretty much cheaper than living in California. So I didn't have to think about budget. I just had to pick a list of places I want to go.
Before we get into the details of how Desmond began jet-setting around the world, let's explore his background. How did a kid from Dayton, Ohio end up in San Diego, California in the first place?
Yeah, so I was really big into math and science growing up. Now, I came from the hood, so to speak. and Humboldt beginnings. I was really good at doing science fair, and I ended up going to Turkey, which was my first international experience. And I was getting recruited for Miami University to do accounting and finance with the Ernst & Young program. And I got enrolled by an amazing man named John Kerr, who pretty much recruited me into the chemical engineering department. And so I was really fortunate to work on a lot of cool stuff there. I did some actual NASA rocket science type of projects, which was these just amazing programs to send experiments up to, not all the way into space, but technically space, right? So I like to keep that badge of honor. And I'd worked in the private industry, and I realized after doing my second internship that this wasn't for me, and that I was curious about what other options I had.
This is why I consider Desmond a kindred spirit. We both have degrees in chemical engineering, and it didn't take each of us long to figure out we didn't want to work in the traditional manufacturing industry for the rest of our careers. He realized something bigger was calling. Opportunity didn't knock on his door. Instead, he knocked on opportunity's door. And
so I decided to turn down a very lucrative internship for another summer in Seattle to go knock on doors with some friends in Dallas, Texas in the heat. And at the time, I knew nothing about sales. I knew nothing about converting or persuading. I had this big gap. So I ended up knocking on over 1,000 doors, got 1,000 doors slammed in my face, got fired halfway through the summer. And I knew in that moment, as I'm sitting in my uncle's house in Texas that I never met before because I got kicked out of the corporate housing, that I wanted to do sales.
How's that for determination? Despite having those 1,000 doors slammed in his face, Desmond wanted to pursue a career in sales anyway.
And so at my junior year, I was like, I want to be a sales guy. So I ended up finishing my chemical engineering, knowing I was going to be a sales guy, applied for nothing but sales jobs, and was really fortunate to land a company called Wesco out in Denver, Colorado, and really just built a multi-million-dollar book of business, just being a student of the game, being just like obsessed with helping my clients, helping them win, trying to go up and beyond. And that's it. Everything else was built from that solid foundation of that 2 to 3 year transition from having a technical background to, being a sales guy. $1 million sales guy.
It's worth mentioning that during Desmond's transition from engineering to sales, he did have a 5-year stint working in different manufacturing plants. After doing what he calls his victory lap, he actively pursued a new career in sales, one that was still at the time an enigma to him. So what made him venture into the unknown when others would have stayed in the comfort of the known?
Intrinsically, I just watching my manager at the time, who was doing this door-to-door, like shadowing him and watching him close these deals with strangers back to back, sitting at their kitchen table with me there at the kitchen table with them as they're like talking through contracts and signing contracts of $7,500. I'm like, you just met this guy 2 hours ago. I was so fascinated. Like, being an engineer, you're always like, your problem solving, like, well, what was the hypothesis of this? Like, was this like voodoo? Like, what just happened?
It wasn't voodoo or magic, but it was intriguing. Intriguing enough to make Desmond want to learn more. He couldn't shake that feeling that he had to get in on this sales thing.
And so I just had this I was like, yo, I'm missing out on something. That curiosity really just drove me, because it's like, man, to watch this connection and this trust and this like exchange of value between these two people really lit a fire underneath my butt.
I hope you enjoyed watching this video. You can catch the full interview by going to businessinfrastructure.tv or by clicking the link below in the description box. Don't forget to subscribe so that you'll know exactly when the next episode drops. See you in the next video.
Join us next week for another episode of Business Infrastructure with Alicia Butler-Pierre.